Born on May 29, 1917, in Brookline, Massachusetts, John F. Kennedy served in both the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate before becoming the 35th president in 1961. As president, Kennedy faced a number of crises, especially in Cuba and Berlin, before managed to secure such achievements as the nuclear tax ban treaty and the Alliance for Progress. Both the Fitzgeralds and the Kennedys were wealthy and prominent Irish Catholic Boston families. This later helps him to win elections. Jack was his nickname for John, and he was the second oldest of 9 siblings. He attended a Catholic boys' boarding school in Connecticut called Canterbury. Kennedy remained, at best, a mediocre student who focused more on girls and practical jokes than his curriculum. He was also chronically ill during his childhood and adolescence. He suffered from severe colds, the flu, scarlet fever, and even more severe undiagnosed diseases that forced him to miss months of school at a time and occasionally brought him to the brink of death. After graduating, spending more than 1 semester at Princeton, Kennedy transferred to Harvard University in 1936. His father had been appointed ambassador to Great Britain, and on an extended visit in 1939, Kennedy decided to write his senior thesis analysis paper on why Britain was so unprepared to fight Germany in World War II. An inclusive analysis of Britain's failures to meet Nazi challenge, Kennedy's graduation in 1940. By this time, it was already a published book called Why England Slept, selling more than 80,000 copies. After graduating from Harvard, Kennedy joined the U.S. Navy and was assigned to command a patrol torpedo boat in the South Pacific. On August 2, 1943, his boat, PT-109, was rammed by a Japanese warship and split in two. Kennedy led the survivors to a nearby island, where they were rescued 6 days later. This incident earned him the Navy and Marine Corps Medal, along with a Purple Heart for the injuries he suffered. Joseph Kennedy, his brother, had been pegged by his father as one of the children to soon become the President of the United States. But after Joe's death, John thought it was, his role to become president. In 1946, at the age of 29, he decided to run for the U.S. House of Representatives from a working-class district of Boston, and Kennedy won that election. Shortly after that election, he met his wife, Jacqueline, and they were married on September 12, 1953. Jack and Jackie had 3 children, Caroline, John Jr., and Patrick. While his career in the Senate, he was recovering from a surgery. He was still fighting his frequent illnesses, and he wrote another book. And Kennedy remains the only American president to win the Pulitzer Prize. In 1960, the Democratic primaries, he appointed the leader, Lyndon B. Johnson, as his running mate. On November 8, 1960, Kennedy defeated Richard Nixon by a razor-thin margin to become the 35th President of the United States of America. At age 43, he was the second youngest American president in history, second to Theodore Roosevelt, who was only 42. But Kennedy was the first Catholic president and the first president to be born in the 20th century. Delivering his inaugural speech on January 20th, 1961, he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." Capitalizing on the spirit of activism he had helped to ignite, Kennedy created the Peace Corps by executive order in 1961. Also in 1961, Kennedy created the Alliance for Progress to foster greater economic ties with Latin America in hopes to lowering poverty and the spread of communism in the region. On April 15, 1961, he authorized a covert mission to overthrow the Cuban leader Fidel Castro with a group of 1,000 CIA-trained Cuban refugees, also known as Bay of Pigs invasion. The mission proved to be a failure, causing Kennedy great embarrassment. The greatest crisis over Kennedy's administration was a Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962. The Soviet Union had sent ballistic nuclear missiles of Cuba. Kennedy blockaded the island and vowed to defend the United States at any cost. The world seemed on the brink of nuclear ammunition. The Soviet Union agreed to remove the missiles in return for Kennedy's promise to not invade Cuba and to remove American missiles from Turkey. 8 months later, in June of 1963, Kennedy successfully negotiated the limited nuclear test ban with Great Britain and the Soviet Union, helping to ease the Cold War tensions. Kennedy only achieved part of his agenda, a modest increase of the minimum wage and a watered-down tax cuts. But this is mainly because of the Southern Democrats in Congress, who remained strictly opposed to the civil rights for black citizens. September of 1962, Kennedy sent his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, to Mississippi to use the National Guard and federal marshals to escort and defend civil rights activist James Meredith, as he became the first black student to enroll in the University of Mississippi on October 1st, 1962. One of the last acts of his presidency and his life, Kennedy's bill eventually passed as the landmark Civil Rights Act in 1964. November 22nd, set. Kennedy, along with his wife and governor of Texas, rode in cheering crowds in downtown Dallas in a Lincoln Continental convertible from an upstairs window of the Texas School Book Depository building. A 24-year-old warehouse worker named Lee Harvey Oswald, who was also a former Marine. He fired upon the car, hitting the president twice. The president shortly died at Parkland Memorial Hospital shortly thereafter, at the age of 46. Later on, Jack Ruby assassinated Lee Harvey Oswald, this is days later, while being transferred between jails. While conspiracy theories have been swirled around ever since Kennedy's assassination, the official version of events remains most plausible. Oswald acted alone. Now, I use two sources, the White House website and also a biography website that has biographies on every president along with other important people in history. But that was my story on John F. Kennedy, and I hope y'all learned a little bit and you can remember on how his presidency changed America.